and they had a ceremony there. You know, they.
Okay, now how many other children were with you being inducted into the family or the order, as they call it?
There were 2 other children at that point, and but there were several adults too.
Okay.
See, the church also brings in adults to swear their allegiance too. Just so you know, I was told, and I don't know if this is true, but if you rise to a certain position within the Catholic Church hierarchy, you do have to go through that ceremony as well.
Okay, so you're down in this room with your parents weren't present.
No. The German father and the French father were. Yeah.
Okay, and at that point, tell our listeners what you witnessed.
Well, there was a table. It looked like dark glass in the center of the room. I mean, it was made of stone, but it was very shiny and dark and black. And it may have been something like obsidian or onyx. I'm not sure. You know, I'd have to. That's the only time I've seen stone like that. And it had like around the corners, they had like these gold, I guess, channels that you know, to collect fluids. And little boy was placed in the center of the table and drugged. I think he was drugged because he was very quiet. He didn't move or say anything during the ceremony. This
was a little 3 or 4-year-old boy.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
And then they continued to go ahead. They continued to do a child sacrifice.
Yes,
right
they
in front of you.
did. Yes. Yeah, I told you about that before. Yeah.
Now, afterwards, quite what a unbelievable experience for a for a 12-year-old. And do you remember the words they were saying as this was going on?
The man was in scarlet. He was speaking in Latin, and basically he was saying, you know, please accept the sacrifice, you know, on this day. But then, you know, and then he said the sacrifice will seal the ceremony, and then he did it. Afterwards, the man in scarlet, he had a huge golden ring on his hand, and he came over to the center of the room, and he had each of the people that were swearing that day. I had to go forward and kneel before him and kiss his ring and swear my allegiance to the new order, to the new world order, until my death. I can't explain the amount of darkness in a room like that, just a pure evil.
So let's take the exorcism first. The rite that the Catholic Church uses for exorcism, they have changed a few words, just I think about 6 words, is the witchcraft rite of exorcism. Okay? Next, on the apparitions, it's the same thing as the Spiritualist Church of America or any of the witchcraft organizations. It's called auras. But the saints or apparitions, I want to get into this thing real quick. The Catholic Church's altar, except for the Atome or the knife, is the exact altar of witchcraft. And according to the reports I can get on the Nicene Council, most of the ministers at the Nicene Council that set that heresy up were from the Temple of Diana, which is witchcraft. So, everything, the bell, the incense, the whole ritual, their holy water is a salt water mixture. This comes from witchcraft, which they do exorcism with. Everything that they do comes out of witchcraft, and they can't get around it.
And essentially, the next thing that happened, before I could get onto the priesthood of Satanism, excuse me, I had to get 7 people to sell our souls to the devil. The other thing I had to do, and this might astonish some of you, is I had to become a Catholic priest. I had to go back to my original vocation, because you cannot be a satanic priest unless, first of all, you're a Catholic priest. And if that surprises you, I just suggest that you go and you read some of the medieval literature. You'll see that that is in fact the case.
And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration.
As the fires of persecution were kindled, Christians were stripped of their possessions and driven from their homes. Great numbers sealed their testimony with their blood. Noble and slave, rich and poor, it didn't matter, learned and ignorant were alike slain without mercy. And unless what is coming is stopped, this will repeat itself. These persecutions, beginning under Nero, the emperor of Rome, AD 55 to 68, about the time of the martyrdom of Paul, continued with greater or less fury for centuries. Christians were falsely accused of the most dreadful crimes and declared to be the cause of all the calamities, famine, pestilence, and earthquake. They were condemned as rebels against the empire, as enemies of religion, and pests to society. Great numbers were thrown to wild beasts or burned alive in the amphitheaters. Some were crucified. Others were covered with the skins of wild animals and thrust into the arena to be torn by dogs. And vast multitudes assembled to enjoy these sights and greeted their dying agonies with laughter and applause. For in that day it was known as the Great Roman Circus, the football, the Super Bowl of that era, and the old Roman Empire flourished under the guise of the Vatican, the papacy, the Catholic Church. In the 13th century was established that most terrible of all the engines of the papacy, the Inquisition. The Prince of Darkness worked through the leaders of the papal hierarchy. In their secret councils, Satan and his angels controlled the minds of evil men who invented tortures too horrible to appear to human eyes. Babylon the Great was drunken with the blood of the saints. The mangled forms of millions of martyrs cried to God for vengeance upon that apostate power. This is word to word from history, folks. Popery became the world's despot. Kings and emperors bowed to the decrees of the Roman pontiff. The destinies of men, both for time and for eternity, seemed under his control. For hundreds of years, the doctrines of Rome had been extensively and implicitly received, its rites reverently performed, and its festivals observed. Its clergy were honored and liberally sustained, but the noon of the papacy was the midnight of the world. That was written by J.A. Wiley in the History of Protestantism. You see, I'm not attacking anyone, and I'm not putting anyone on a pedestal. I'm not tearing down the Vatican in order to build up the Protestant Church, for they are equally guilty. Protestantism has fractured the teachings of Christ into thousands of sects and cults and little groups, all of them professing to know the truth. None of them really do. And now you are seeing the beginning of the combination of all religions into one world religion. And while the world and the New Age movement may be waiting for the emergence of Maitreya, I tell you now here, and remember, that I have been the most accurate in making predictions about future world events based upon study and knowledge, not psychic ability, not any gift given to me from God, although I am a messenger, I can assure you of that. I tell you that in the New World Order, the one world, charismatic, and religious leader will be seated upon the throne of Rome. Mark my words.
And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is.
The Bible says that this power was. Now, the power in Rome, the Roman Church, began in 538 AD and continued until Napoleon sent in General Berthier in 1798. So from 538 to 1798 it was a world power, and is not. From 1798 until the signing of the Lateran Treaty in 1929, the Roman Church state was non-existent. Yet it is. From 1929 to present, the Roman Catholic Church has been a church and state power.
And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth.
Now the Bible says that these heads represent mountains on which the woman sitteth. Looking into Strong's Concordance, mountain can also translate out into hill. Is there a church and state sitting on 7 hills somewhere in this world? In the Catholic Encyclopedia, page 529, quote, "It is within the city of Rome, called the City on 7 Hills, that the entire area of Vatican State proper is now confined," unquote.
And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition.
So we know that the papal power, the Vatican, was from 538 to 1798, that it was wounded in 1798, and then the wound was healed in 1929 by the Lateran Treaty, in which the Italian state recognized the sovereignty of the Catholic Church and regarded the Church as an independent member of the international community. Also, the Pope pledged to perpetual neutrality in international relations and abstention from mediation in any controversy except when specifically requested by all concerned